I have so many updates for you that we're going to go through, so brace for impact. I'll show you this video that's representative of a big problem we've been talking about, Trump administration related. Leave that up for a second though, Jay. Before we get into the substance, the important stuff, I mentioned this yesterday with this same White House event. Maybe it's actually a segment that will be on today's main show, but why won't he just pick one shade of orange? That's my question, okay? I actually don't have a big problem. I don't have a problem at all with bruhs wearing makeup. Fine. But just pick one color. Find one. You've been doing this for years. Just find one color. It's always different. Why? Sometimes it looks almost normal, and then he'll just lather on neon orange. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Just need to get that out of the way because we're getting to very important stuff. So we need to start with the less important thing. Here's Trump saying we need to look at the judges. Look at the judges. This coming as he is initiating what is a really scary episode of American history. That's what we're observing right now. That's what we're living through, where he and his allies are justifying and doing something brazenly unconstitutional that, if it proceeds, would throw us into a constitutional crisis. If you appreciate this show, as I always want to remind you, if you're not, please do subscribe.
Hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption, and it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation.
What does that mean, look at the judges? Your followers need to look at the judges? Is this encouraging threats? What do you mean, look at the judges? No, the judges do have the authority to tell you, not that you're not allowed to weed out corruption, that you're not allowed to be corrupt and not follow the law. Again, this is an extremely scary moment in American history where Trump's legal counsel, the White House legal counsel, is saying this.
Separation of powers. It's a really novel idea, but our founding fathers created a document, the Constitution. There's a separation of powers for a reason. The executive branch is the ultimate authority on federal issues, and we have rogue judges who are trying to stop members like Doge Team, Besant, from doing their job, and that's to protect taxpayer dollars.
Do you hear what she's tasked? What used to be a renowned position, the White House counsel. She's tasked with informing the president on what is and isn't legal, what is and isn't constitutional. And she, in the same sentence, says separation of powers is great. I agree. And then says the executive branch is the ultimate authority on all things federal. The exact quote being ultimate authority on federal issues. Even Elon's ex, someone had to add a community note saying the executive branch is not the ultimate authority on federal issues and has not been for over 2 centuries. The judiciary, including low federal courts, have power to rule on the legality of conduct, the executive branch. Obviously. I mean, what do you think the judiciary is for? We're going to get to a Supreme Court justice issuing a dire warning in a second here, but what do you think the judiciary is for? It just does rulings for fun? Whenever someone brings a case against the federal government can just say nah if there's a ruling? Well, you're right, the separation. Listen to how she started this again. Listen to how she started.
Separation of powers. It's a really novel idea, but
yeah, pretty epic, huh? That's what you're admitting you don't respect at all. Not the ultimate authority. Chris Murphy writing the reason that there are a lot of court orders telling Trump he can't do things is because he's been doing a crazy huge amount of illegal shit in his first 3 weeks in office. This isn't rocket science. It's basic physics, action and reaction. And then I reference amid this frightening time, a Supreme Court justice, she has to do it in a subtle way because you're not supposed to be super political publicly. Supposedly. Some of them don't really follow that much, but the Daily Beast reports that Supreme Court Justice sounds alarm over Trump's monarchy power grab. President Trump pledged Tuesday to always abide by court rulings. This is something he said during that White House meeting with Elon. meaningless as his administration, as a judge has said, is actively not following the judge's ruling. Mere days after his lieutenant Elon Musk called for the judge's impeachment because he didn't like his ruling. And this is Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who is a liberal justice, but she said our founders were hell-bent on ensuring that we didn't have a monarchy. And the first way they thought of that was to give Congress the power of the purse, meaning the executive branch is not the ultimate authority on federal issues. Actually, there is no ultimate authority on federal issues in a general sense, because the federal government splitting up powers, that separation of powers thing she mentioned, divides the powers on federal issues. Imagine saying that. On federal issues, the executive branch, no, there's three of them. There's three branches, as you just alluded to. And going further in this, court decisions stand, Sotomayor said, whether one particular person chooses to abide by them or not. She said to an audience in Miami when asked about maintaining the separation of powers between government branches, it doesn't change the foundation that it's still a court order that someone will respect at some point. Again, she has to stay sort of vague. Trump's abiding by some of the rulings, but not all of them. And we need court actions that are aggressive, but ultimately, as a bunch of MAGAs have been rooting on, they reference the Andrew Jackson quote that goes something to the effect of, the Supreme Court has issued its opinion, now let them enforce it. Because aside from, ultimately, it's very difficult if you have a rogue president to hold them properly accountable because they're the one in charge of enforcement. So they really have the enforcement mechanisms at their disposal. At the event that we talked about yesterday that you saw a clip from the beginning of this segment, Elon Musk was saying this. We forgot to go over this clip.
Democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, we would have to, if you sorry. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
And there it is. One of the things you'll notice from authoritarians, you can, a reoccurring theme throughout history is that people who destroy or assault democracy do it nominally in the name of democracy. Now, we're the protectors of democracy. Why? Well, then it gets very confusing for a lot of people when they hear both sides shouting, they're destroying democracy. No, they are. And so the way that you can best defend yourself PR-wise from the allegation that you're doing something that undermines democracy, like ignoring checks and balances or ignoring laws, or in Trump's case previously, trying to block the peaceful transfer, is to say, no, I'm doing these things in the interest of democracy. X has become such a bad component of a democracy that I should be able to circumvent our democratic process for the time being to save our democracy. It constantly happens when you have someone who doesn't actually respect democracy, is they use that justification. So his is, well, our bureaucracy has gotten out of control. What does it mean? The federal workforce. We made a lot of laws. We want to do a lot of stuff. So people have to do the stuff. And as we're seeing, they used to say that as if there's some deep state, there's some restriction of elected representative power. But what we're learning is, you just don't think those workers should do their jobs because you're just shutting down agencies. So no, I don't have a problem with the fact that when there's an agency, there'll be people working at it. And your only solution to make us more democratic has been just to get rid of agencies. No, thank you. If Americans vote for people wanting them to do stuff, then it makes sense they would hire the necessary people to do those things. And that gets us. So that's all he's talking about with the bureaucracy. And then they get upset when there are checks and balances in place. And so to backtrack, his point is the bureaucracy is no longer democratic because it has some authority that takes away from the elected representatives' authority. But we don't see that demonstrated because, yes, our elected representatives have the power to change what the workforce is doing, change the priorities of the bureaucracy, etc. But elected representatives have checks and balances. So your issue is not that the bureaucracy has too much power. It's that you're trying to do things and command the federal workforce and command these agencies in ways that you don't have the power to because you have Congress, because you have the judiciary. That's why. But they've created this boogeyman of the deep state bureaucracy to justify anti-democratic actions. And what's another justification for it? Well, the American people voted for this.
Well, no, but wait a second. But let's just talk about one of the things that he's prescribing to cut. He wants to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Here's what it's done for the folks at home. It's limited overdraft fees at banks. It's limited credit card late fees. It's made it easier for you to switch banks. It's removed medical debt from people's credit reports so that you can actually get rent after you've been sick. It's gone after banks who've taken advantage of people.
What's your argument?
My argument here is these are things that have protected the American people every day, and Elon wants to get rid of them because it doesn't work for millionaires and billionaires. No, they did not.
Yes,
they did not vote to get.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did. I can't even go up there. Yes, they did.
Where were you on November?
These are things that have protected the American people every day, and Elon wants to get rid of them because it doesn't work for millionaires and billionaires. No, they did not.
Yes,
they did not vote to get.
Yes, they did.
I'm sure.
Where were you on November 5th?
Donald Trump did not go to the American people and says, "I want to raise your overdraft fees." Did he? No, I don't think so.
They made it clear that what Doge was when he
did
was
not
running
go to
for
the American
president.
people and says, "I want to raise the amount you pay on late fees." Actually, the opposite of that. He said, "I'm going to cap late fees." That's not what's happening when you get rid of the Consumer Protection Bureau. You're right; it is too late. So hopefully, American people wake up.
Gutfeld has one of the most irritating manners or irritating means, I should say, of making arguments, which is confidently stating his argument, watching it get defeated, and then just laughing smugly. Too late. But what was the back and forth there about? That statement of Americans voted for this, which is what we've been hearing so much of lately. And to the point there from the liberal Fox host, no, Trump made it sound like he was going to be good for their financial well-being. And now he's getting rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that actively protects consumers to make sure that they're not being ripped off and saves them money. And he's trying to get rid of that such that they'd be ripped off more and lose money. And Gutfeld goes, well, they voted for him, so whatever. And I just want to ask you, aside from your defense can't just be Americans voted for it, I want to hear why you think that was the right decision too. Why do you think it, even if we accept this is what this is what enough Americans to get Trump elected wanted. They wanted the extra fees. They wanted to be defrauded. Even if we accepted that absurd notion, why do you think that's the right decision? It's justify the policy still. The debate doesn't go away just because someone gets elected. But the second part is the hypocrisy. Every time Biden did anything, he literally sat in a chair and sunbathed once, and they lost their mind. Anytime he did anything, Fox News would figure out a way to freak out over it. Biden's terrible. Right? I didn't hear them going, well, I mean, you can't say it's wrong because Americans voted for it. More Americans than voted for Trump. Way more. I didn't hear that. Every time they said that Biden was doing something terrible and Biden did inflation and Biden did this and did that, and they lied often about it, was the response from them, oh, wait, we can't make that criticism because Americans voted for him. No, it wasn't. Was it? Well, too late. No, it wasn't. And I don't expect it to be. Even if someone gets elected, understanding that the reasons people vote for a politician is rarely ever an endorsement of every single thing they're ever going to do. And politicians can mislead people. And even if people thought it was a good idea, doesn't mean it was a good idea. It's not a logical justification, but they use it a lot. Okay, a couple other rapid fire news items. CNN reports accused Russian money launderer is being released in exchange for Mark Fogel, but Mark Fogel did get released back to the United States. He was being wrongfully detained in Russia, and that is good news. That is good news. You see, MAGA, even when Trump's president, I don't have to politicize everything. But here is Mark Fogel with Trump, and Trump gets asked about this deal, doesn't want to share a lot of details.
I mean,
what were the terms of this deal, Mr. President?
Very fair, very, very fair, very reasonable. Not like deals you've seen over the years. They were very fair. And I think that's going to lead, and somebody else is being released tomorrow that you will know of. But we wanted to get this done, very important. And Steve wanted to actually fly over and get Mark and get him home.
And Mark was obviously very grateful. He directly was grateful to Trump. I do want to note, you remember every time someone got released under Biden, the entire news cycle on the right was figuring out how to say it was terrible. It's just so gross. But then, of course, right, left, and center, people will just be normal and care about one's humanity when it happens under Trump. Or I should say liberal media won't go, well, it's terrible because Trump. Such an unequal playing field, this American politics thing. But I will note that Trump, another unequal aspect is he's also not as transparent. So we haven't received much details as of when I'm recording this, other than it did seem to be a prisoner swap. And great, I'm happy that Mark is home with his family. Their news, CBS reports Trump ousted director of Office of Government Ethics. That's great. President Trump on Monday removed the director of the Office of Government Ethics, the independent agency responsible for overseeing ethics rules and financial disclosures for the executive branch. So pushing out more people who seek to hold him accountable. ABC News reports that measles cases are rising in the U.S., mainly among those who are unvaccinated, as we have RFK Jr. I'm not saying he just became Health and Human Services director, so I'm not saying this is because of him, but it points to the absolute terror I feel about him being HHS secretary if he promotes anti-vax policies while in that position, because we're already dealing with unvaccinated outbreaks. Trump posted Biden inflation up because of inflation ticking up. Any good economic indicators he takes credit for. He doesn't say this is because of Biden's economy. And then any negative ones he's going to blame on Biden. So get ready for that. And as Trump is saying he wants to terminate FEMA, I want to remind you here that individual assistance payments, as Axios reports on, disproportionately benefit Trump's own states where FEMA's direct relief money is going. Florida, Louisiana, and Texas residents have received the lion's share of FEMA direct assistance since 2015 per newly gathered data. Data is what we call producer Cole Delapaz. Data, newly gathered data, and another example, as is the attack on the Department of Education, of how Trump really has no regard even for those who put him in power. Share your thoughts in the comments.